The Germans were very deep into the occult, into the black magic, into all these things that the media would prefer not to talk about. A lot of this supposedly came up during the Nuremberg trials, and it all was stricken out of the record. The Germans were fascinated with the South Pole, and Hans Hubriger was an author and a philosopher that Hitler and all the other SS men and Nazi men were crazy about. Hubriger had this philosophy of the fire and ice, that the German character, which is the New World Order, the Illuminati philosophy of creating the Supermensch of the future, that only the fire and ice of the harsh polar conditions can toughen the steel character of the Supermensch of the future. And this is a second reason that they went after the South Pole. A third and bigger reason lies deep into the German mythology about the Thule people. When Greenland was still not under ice, there was a tall, blonde, Nordic-looking race that lived there, and later moved to the inner of the Earth, and still lives there, flying their saucers, much more advanced than their lagging, should I call them retarded brothers on the surface of the planet. And so it has been the secret dream of the Germans on the surface to find and to reunite with their more advanced Aryan brothers from the inner Earth, according to German and secret SS mythology. So I talked to a psychic about a year ago. I mean, this is a collection of anthropological rumors and legends. Some of these I can prove, like a photograph of a German spacesuit. Others I cannot, but I never debunk or disprove or discard anything. So according to the psychic, Hitler did 2 expeditions to the inner Earth, one in the late 30s with a specially equipped submarine that was attempting to enter the North Polar water opening to the inner Earth. They found the opening, and it's about probably several hundred kilometers to possibly 1,000 kilometers in diameter. And they started going inside, but they encountered very strong cross currents. Didn't want to submerge because they did not know what lies underneath. And they reached a moment where their submarine could proceed no more against these heavy currents. According to rumor, there are strong force field shields, defenses at the openings, run by the races in the inner Earth that basically do not want much of contact with us, the lesser developed savages on the surface. Another attempt was made in the 42-43 with a anti-gravity powered cigar-shaped 2-seater craft, smaller version of the giant mothership, and it makes sense because the Germans were always making small models of the much larger airplanes that they did. By the way, I'm chasing a rumor that they had an Arado flying boat that could carry 720 fully armed soldiers. I just heard the rumor, and I think I have something in the drawing. I'm looking for a photograph for this mystery plane of the Germans. Back to the South Pole, they always did smaller models of bigger engines or craft. So with this 2-seater cigar-shaped anti-gravity craft, they were finally successfully able to enter the inner Earth and to contact the inner Earthlings there. That was the third reason for the Germans to drive to the South Pole. And the more obvious reason was that they were losing the war in Germany, and ever since the United States entered the war, it became obvious to anybody who had some international cosmopolitan education in Germany that they would lose the war. To every German plane produced and flown in the air, there were 5 Allied planes. We have seldom been told these statistics, that the Germans had less than, about 1/5 of the planes. Probably the ratios of artillery, of tanks, and of other armaments were not much different. They were bound to lose that war. They didn't have the industrial capacity to match the Americans, the British, and the Russians. I mean, in the end of the war, British and Russians could freely bomb Germany with almost impunity. They couldn't reach anything of the Russian mega continent, very little of England, and nothing of the United States. I mean, they were bound to lose that war. So they basically decided to lose the European war in order to win the South Polar War. This is the same, I think. Yeah. So in the late 30s, in 1936, the SS party did a excellent 4-year plan for the colonization of the South Pole. The 4-year plan, very detailed plan. They were showing the areas without any snow. It's okay. Without any snow. And we see the seal of the first German Antarctic expedition, 1938-39. We see here quietly the oak leaves of the, this is oak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The oak leaves of the Thule Society. It was under the sponsorship of the secret patronage of the Thule Society. They descended on the South Pole. This is a letter of congratulations signed by Göring, the Reichsmarshal of Aviation, to the members of the South Polar expedition. And one may think, how come that the aviation Reichsminister is interested in the South Polar expedition, unless they were preparing to build some bases there for the Luftwaffe. The motor ship, the research ship Schwabenland, was launching flying boats that were scouting the South Polar continent and staking their claims. They didn't even bother to land at all places. They would just drop flags with heavy poles. That was enough by international convention. And then they would register their claims with the International Court of Hague. And this is how, in 38-39, the Germans became the legal owners of a chunk of real estate, probably as big as 2/3 of Europe, south of South Africa, on the South Pole. Here are members of the expedition staking the claim. Much later, photographs appeared in the late 40s of the German colony in the Neuschwabenland from an altitude way above and beyond the altitude of the biggest stratospheric bombers at the time, which was about 10-12 kilometers. This is an altitude of 60-70 kilometers, maybe 100 kilometers, basically Earth's orbit. And the speculation is that this is a photograph of the German South Polar colony from a saucer, from that height.
That coastal region?
Excuse me?
That coastal region?
Yeah, close to the coastal region. This is a photograph of the German Space Control Center on the South Pole. At the beginning I thought, nah, it looks kind of cylindrical cavern like the insides of a U-boat. But then somebody observed, well, how come then this guy is standing inclined 45 degrees if this is a U-boat? And then we realized that this is a fisheye type wide-angle lens, one of the first such for photography. Probably in the late 40s the Germans had such lenses then, which means that this is a much larger room. Examining the screens here, we see that these are round cathode ray tube, possibly radar screens, which jive with the vintage late 40s, early 50s. They did not have the square computer screens at the time. And all the other equipment is clearly analog needle type measuring meters, which basically is the state of the art in the late 40s, early 50s.
That look like rock formations on the wall?
Excuse me?
Does that look like rock formations further down?